Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today is Turkey Day. So of course for Thanksgiving we're going to be building this turkey. I'm going to go through the yarn with you after, but I want to touch on the eyes. These are 16mm safety eyes. We do actually put the backs on, so we're going to be making the eyes first just so we can get them ready for when we finish building the body. This is super duper easy, so don't let this intimidate you at all. It is super duper easy to do. So let's jump right into this. The brown I'm using is a Craft Smart Value. It's chocolate. The yellow I've chosen to use for this project is a Craft Smart Value, and it's butter. One of the offset colors I've chosen to use is this koi color. This is Align Brand's Woolies. The white I'm using is a Bernat Value. And the red here that I use for the wattle can just be any scrap red that you have laying around. It doesn't really matter as long as it's red. Let's jump right into this. I'm using a 4.5 for this project. We're going to start with white because we're going to make these eyes and get them ready. You're going to need a stitch marker because we're going to be building in amigurumi. So make a magic ring of 6 single crochets. If you don't like the magic ring, then you can do a chain 2 and put everything into that first stitch. So no slip stitching, no chaining. You're going to pop right over to your first stitch. You're going to put 2 single crochets in each stitch around. After the first one, that's when your marker goes in, and then stitch number 2 can go in that same space. We need this hole to be open for the safety eye, so don't worry about weaving in or anything. Your next round is going to be 3 single crochets and an increase, because I just wanted a wee tiny little increase. That's number 1. That's 3 single crochets, and then your next stitch will get the increase. 2 single crochets in the same space, and repeat. So that's it. You can fasten off. Sewing tail to sew this on after. So you can do whatever you want with this guy. I actually use it in my sewing process. So, and then this 16mm safety eye goes into the center. So we're going to be putting these on halfway through making the head. So we'll need to do our second one. The pattern will be on the screen, but I will be in fast motion. There we go. I got both my eyes done, so let's move on to building the body. So we start with brown. Well, we don't start with brown. The whole body is brown. The feet get sewn on, so they're all done separately. So you can start with a magic ring of 6 single crochets. Your next round is going to be 2 single crochets in each stitch around. So after the first stitch, that's where your marker goes in. Stitch number 2 can go in that same space. 2 single crochets in each stitch all the way around will give you 12 stitches. Your next round is going to be 1 single crochet and an increase. So bring it up to 18 stitches. That's number 1. And then your next stitch will get the increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. And repeat. Your next round is going to be 2 single crochets and an increase. This will bring it up to 24 stitches. That's number 1. That's number 2. And then your increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. And repeat. Your next round is going to be 3 single crochets and an increase. This will bring it up to 30 stitches. That's number 1. That's 3 single crochets and then your increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. And repeat. Your next round is going to be 4 single crochets and an increase, and this will bring it up to 36 stitches. That's number 1. That's 4 single crochets and then your increase. In the next stitch is 2 single crochets. And repeat. Your next round is going to be 5 single crochets and an increase. This will bring it up to 42 stitches. That's number 1. That's 5 single crochets and then your increase. 2 single crochets in the same stitch. And repeat. So your last increase round is going to be 6 single crochets and an increase. This brings you up to 48 stitches. So that's number 1. That's 6 single crochets, and then the next stitch gets the increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. And repeat. So this is what you should have. For the next 10 rows, I just want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 48 stitches, and I will see you on the other side. So that's my 10 rows. So we can start stuffing. You can start stuffing it. I'm not going to stuff mine. It's too hard to hold, so I'm going to wait a little bit longer. So we're going to start decreasing now. So your next round is going to be 6 single crochets and a decrease, because we ended with a 6 single crochet increase. That's number 1. That's my 6 single crochets. So you have 2 choices for a decrease, and I know it's super duper hard to see. A regular one, you go into the full stitch, you pull up a loop. You go into the next full stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. The decrease I like to use is called an invisible decrease, because you use the front loops only, leaving these back loops back there to fill in the gaps that you generally get with a decrease. So you go into your front loop and you pop around and go into your next front loop. Then you yarn over, pull through those 2, yarn over, and finish the stitch. So it leaves that behind there, so there's no gapping and hence invisible. So that's the one I'm going to choose to use. You can use whichever one you want, but it's 6 single crochet decrease nonetheless. Stuck on something there. So your next round is going to be 5 single crochets and a decrease. This will bring you down to 36 stitches. That's number 1. That's 5 single crochets and then your decrease. And repeat. So you should have 36 stitches. Your next round, round 20, is going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 36 stitches. So we're going to continue to decrease. Your next round is going to be 4 single crochets and a decrease. This will bring you down to 30 stitches. That's number 1. That's 4 single crochets, and then your decrease, and repeat. So I'm going to stuff mine a little bit before I continue. So your next round, you should have 30 stitches. So your next round is just going to be 1 single crochet in each of those 30 stitches. So your next round is going to be 3 single crochets and a decrease. So bring it down to 24 stitches. That's number 1. That's 3 single crochets and then your decrease. And repeat. So you should have 24 stitches. For the next 4 rows, I just want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 24 stitches. So that's the end of my 4 rows. So we're going to continue to decrease. You're going to do a 2 single crochet decrease. This will bring you down to 18 stitches. That's number 1. And that's my decrease. The 2 single crochet decrease all the way around. So I should have 18 stitches for the next 4 rows. You're going to put 1 single crochet in each of these 18 stitches. So I did not use any wire for my neck, as this is the part we're building, and his head is a little bit wobbly, so I think I'm going to put a wire in this one, but you can do whatever you want. Just try not to overstuff it. So that's my 4 rows. So now I want you to do 1 single crochet and a decrease. This will bring you down to 12 stitches. So for the next 2 rows, I just want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 12 stitches. And then when we come back, we're going to start building the head. So that's my 2 rows. So this is the long gooseneck you should have. Turkey, but we're calling it a gooseneck. So your next round, we're going to start the head. I'm going to use wire. So I don't exactly know how long I need the wire. I'm going to put this on the screen so you know what it is. So I've got a piece. Let's measure it for you if you want to know. 10.5, almost 11 inches long. I put electrical tape around the Sharpie points just to be safe. So I still need to put stuffing in this. It is not difficult to work around a wire. So if you're contemplating whether you should use one, it's really not that hard at all to work around. You don't have to do any of this. This can be awkward, especially this stuffing part. So I'm just making sure this is a gradual movement without overstuffing. So your next round is going to be increase round, an aggressive increase round, because we're going to build this head on. So your next round is going to be 2 single crochets in each stitch. So this will take you from 12 to 24. So your next round is going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 24 stitches. So this is what it should look like. Your next increase round is going to be 1 single crochets and an increase. This will bring it up to 36 stitches. That's 1 single crochet, and then the next stitch gets the increase of 2 single crochets in the same space, and repeat. So we're going to continue to increase one more time, 2 single crochet and an increase, and this brings you up to 48. So that's as far as we're going, same as the body. That's number 1, that's number 2, and then your increase of 2 single crochets in the same space, and repeat. So this is what you should have. This is what it should look like. For the next 4 rows, I just want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 48 stitches. And I will see you on the other side. So that's my 4 rows. This is what it should look like. So we're going to start to decrease. We're going to start with a, because I mean the head that I built's funny shaped, but it's turkey shaped. It's not exactly turkey shaped, but anyway. Your next round is going to be 6 single crochets and a decrease. We're on round 44. That's number 1. That's 6 single crochets and then your decrease. And repeat. So that's 42 stitches. For the next round is just going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 42 stitches. So your next round is going to be 5 single crochets and a decrease. And this will bring you down to 36 stitches. So you should have 36 stitches. Your next round is going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 36 stitches. So we're going to be putting the eyes in soon, so that's why I'm not stuffing it. Your next round is going to be 4 single crochets and a decrease. So your next round is going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 30 stitches. So I decided before I keep going, I need to make sure my neck, even though I've got this wire in here, I want to make sure my neck, just don't fill it right up to here because we're going to be putting eyes in. I just need to make sure my neck is going to be fully stable. Alright, I think that's good. I don't want to boing it out too much here. So, you got 2 more rounds before we put the eyes in and continue. This one's going to be 3 single crochets and a decrease. And that's followed up by a round of 1 single crochet in each of these 24 stitches. And then when we come back from this round, we're gonna put the eyes in, or put the eyes on. Alrighty, my last stitch. We're gonna put the eyes in. So I need you to stuff it a little bit, but the eyes are going in from between the 6th and 7th row from the top. But you got to make sure that when the white is sewn on, they're going to be touching each other. So when I sew these on, now keep in mind the stuffing is going to push these out a bit. So it is difficult to do it this way, which is why I never do it this way. I always like hot glue them in, but we're going to try it. So we can sew this on after we're done the head. Now that that's in, we can continue to decrease and continue to stuff. So we're going to move on to a 2 single crochet decrease. This brings you down to 18 stitches. So you should have 18 stitches. I just want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 18 stitches. So one last round, and then you're going to have to stuff it, is 1 single crochet and a decrease. This will bring you down to 12 stitches, and then we're going to cinch from there. So that's 1 single crochet right there with your marker. So we jump right into the decrease. So we're all done. You can fasten off. You just need a cinching tail. So finish filling it. So he's going to have a little tuft of hair on here, but it still needs to look decent. So you don't want a wrinkly head. So we're going to cinch this closed. So we're going to go in the front loop. I know it's hard to see, and out the front loop. It's hard to see because it's brown. So in and out all the way around. And then you can pull. Pop across, make some knots. And I'm just going to weave. So that's the shape of your head. That's the shape your head needs to be. Just like that. So we can sew these eyes on. Like I said, they need to be out to meet each other. I'm just popping out the back with my stragglers. So once your eye is sewn on, I meet up with my straggler for that particular eye. So this was my straggler. So I'm just going to pop over, come up in the same hole, tie these two in a double knot, and weave my pieces away. So next we're going to be doing the beak, the wattle, a little tuft of hair, and then we'll move on to the rest of it. This wattle was done originally with Bernat Value True Red, that's the color. But today's video, I'm just using any scrap red I got laying around, and this is Craft Smart Super Value Tomato. It's really close to being almost the same color, so that's what we're going to do next. So get your yellow. We're going to make this beak. We're going to start with a magic ring of 3 single crochets. This is a difficult thing to do because it is so small, but if my fat fingers manage to do it in the first place, then don't pull this tight. We can pull it tight after. So trying to get into your first stitch, I'm going to use the hook side of my hook, and I'm going to kind of slip in backwards. I think it might be easier. I'm not using a stitch marker. It is way too squishy. So my first round is going to be 2 single crochets and an increase. Every round you're only going to do once. So that was my 2 single crochets. So this one is going to be my increase. So wiggle it around, pop this around. It is so super duper small. A smaller hook in there. Alright, so now we're going to do 3 single crochets and an increase. So I'm going to marker this just so I know where I'm going, what my stitches are. That's 1. That's 2. You're only going to do every single row 1 time. That's 3. And then your last stitch will get the increase. So, one more row, I'm going to cut off this. One more row, and that's 4 single crochets and an increase. You're only going to do that 1 time as well. And that is it. You can fasten off. You'll need a sewing tail. So that's your little beak. It's so tiny that there's no point putting stuffing in this at all. I don't even know if you could put stuffing in it. So we can sew. I don't know if it's easier for you to whip stitch this closed or cinch it closed. Either way, make sure this is at least a couple of rows down from your eyes, because we're going to hang the wattle off of it. So however you decide to sew this on, just sew it where a mouth would be, basically. So I'm just going to make sure mine's in the middle. That is it. Doesn't take much. So my weaving consists of basically just going up the beak and down the beak. I mean, I don't know what else. Where else you could really weave. Just gonna go down the center. Pop out somewhere. So that's about the gist of the beak. You don't see a whole lot of beak after we put the wattle on. I don't know if you'll notice that the wattle takes up this whole top area. So let's make that next. So get yourself some red. We're going to start this with a magic ring of 6 single crochets. Your first round is going to be 1 single crochet and an increase. Building this in amigurumi. No slip stitching. We don't want any seams anywhere. That's 1 single crochet. And then your next stitch is going to get the increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. Oops. And repeat. This will give you a total of 9 stitches. Your next round is just going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 9 stitches. Pop that around. Your next round is going to be 2 single crochets and an increase. This will bring you up to 12 stitches. So for the next 4 rows, I just want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 12 stitches. I'm just going to count to 48. So that's my 48 stitches, or my 4 rows. So now we're going to start to decrease. We're going to do a 2 single crochet decrease. This will bring you down to 9 stitches. That's number 1 with your marker. That's 2, and then your decrease. So I am still doing invisible. We are going to need to stuff this bottom part But that's about it. We don't really stuff the rest of the way. We just want it to hang properly. So just this part. And only because it's big, right? The rest of it is going to be super small. And we don't really need to worry about it because it's just not. And don't really overstuff this. Like, just put a wee bit. So for the next 4 rows, I just want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 9 stitches. So I'm just going to count to 36. So that's my 4 rows. I ended up taking some stuffing out of here because this yarn is pretty thick and I don't even really think I need a whole lot, but there's still some wee little bit in there. So, excuse me. Your next round is going to be 1 single crochet and a decrease, and this brings you down to 6 stitches. So, for the next 11 rows, I want you to put 1 single crochet in each of these 6 stitches, and I will see you on the other side. So that is my 11 rows. This is what you should have. So we're going to fasten off. We're going to whip stitch it closed. I did try it with a cinch and it looked horrible. So the whip stitch looks better, if you can believe that. I think it's because I lost too much girth doing the cinch. So everything was kind of... So you got to wrap it around the nose, or the beak, the nose. Wrap it around the beak. And then I just sewed through. So that is your wattle. There we go. So hopefully you can't tell mine's not quite where it should be. Mine's not quite at the center. So you can just wave down your wattle, I suppose. You kind of sewed into the beak, if you did it like me. So as far as this head of hair, I just took my yellow and wrapped it around my 4 widened fingers. Just a few times, you only need a few pieces. Cut it off and then cut this in half. Get rid of your small little pieces. And then you take your hook you fold your yellow in half. grab a piece of post on your head, hook that on, pull it through, pull this up, yarn over, and pull through those two pieces, and then pull it tight. So that's how I'm going to put my hair on, just on the very tippy top. And then I unwind it, like I'm just doing it around the cinch hole. It's just there to make them look cute. Not too many places up here. So, once you're done, we're just going to pull these all apart. And then just kind of with our fingers. So once you're all done, we're just going to cut it off short, and then we just mess it up. That's how I did his hair on top. Probably stand to be a little bit shorter, but I don't mind at all. Get some brown. We're going to just put some little eyebrows on his eyes, because that's what it showed on the picture. Snagged a picture off of Pinterest. That's what it showed on the picture. You just got to make sure you make happy eyebrows. My last ones didn't look, I don't know, it kind of looks sad on my last one. There, something like that. You can make them longer, shorter, angular. You can do whatever you want. But that's where his eyebrows are going to go. Show you my last one. That was my last one. And he just looks so sad. So, I changed it up a bit. And I'm super glad I put that wire in his neck, too. Much better. Alrighty. So, let's move on to the wings. Then we'll do the feet, and then we'll do his great big plume on his bum bum. So we're going to start these wings with, I'm starting out with my koi color. So I guess you can pick whatever color you're starting with. And we're going to do a magic ring of 6 single crochets. Your next round is going to be 2 single crochets in each stitch. That's the first stitch, and it gets the marker. Stitch number 2 can go into that same place. 2 single crochets in each stitch around will give you 12 stitches. Your next round is going to be 1 single crochet and an increase. That's number 1. Then your next stitch will get the increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. If mine looks smaller to you, that's because I'm using woolies, so it's probably going to look smaller. If you're using regular acrylic yarn, yours is going to be a little bit bigger. Your next round is going to be 2 single crochets and an increase. That's 2 single crochets and then your increase. 2 single crochets in the same space. And repeat. This will bring you up to 24 stitches. Your next round is going to be 3 single crochets and an increase, and this will bring it up to 30 stitches. So the next round we're going to introduce the pop stitch. So the pop stitch, starting in this first stitch, you're going to yarn over and put 4 double crochets into this first stitch. That's my 4 double crochets. I want you to pull out your hook and then count back 4 and go into the first stitch that you made. Put the loop back on, yarn over, pull through those 2 and then secure it. Kind of push this aside so you can see your next stitch, and then in between your pop stitches you're going to do 2 single crochets, and then you're going to do another pop stitch. So 4 double crochets into the same space, pull out your loop, count back 4, put the loop on, yarn over, pull through, and secure the stitch, and do 2 single crochets. So that's going to be your repeat all the way around, and that is called the pop stitch. So I'm just doing my last puff stitch, or pop stitch. We're going to change colors. So you only have 1 stitch left, and that's where we're going to change color in. So I'm going to go to yellow. those are the two colors that I chose. So this is all going to be folded in half. No one's going to see the inside, so I'm just going to tie these two colors together like I normally do. So we're going to fold this in half from where you are right here. We're going to start crocheting these two ends together, so stitch for stitch, if you fold it properly. You're just going to do one single crochet, sewing or crocheting these two together. So it's about 21 stitches for me. Yours might be different. My last one was 23 stitches. So it just depends on how many spaces you're able to, you know, kind of get into or do whatever. So chain one, and this count doesn't matter. It makes no difference at all. So now we're going to do the puff stitch. So you'll never really see this row. You'll see a little bit of it, but... So the puff stitch is you yarn over and you go into your stitch 4 times. And then you pull through all of them. So I'll walk you through it. So we're going to start in this very first stitch. You're going to yarn over and you're going to go in and pull up a loop. Now really pull that up. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Pull up a loop. You're going to do it 4 times. Pull up a loop. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through all of them and secure the stitch. And then in this next stitch, you're going to slip stitch. And then you're going to do it all over again. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Pull up a loop. Pull up a loop 4 times. Yarn over, pull through all, secure the stitch, slip stitch. This is my last puff stitch. So in this very last stitch, you're going to slip stitch and fasten off. You're going to need a sewing tail. And that's your wing. So if you don't like how curved that is, I mean, you can just not put in as many puffs or pops. But that's your wing. So it gets sewn kind of cockeyed a little bit. You can sew it on any way you want. I sewed mine kind of like that on my guy. So diagonal-ish, like that. I know it's hard to tell, but I didn't sew mine on until after I had my tail on, just as a reference to where to put them. But If you don't think that these are popping enough, you can just adjust your, push them up. So that's the back, that's the front. So I'm going to put the pattern up, and you can go ahead and do these, or you can go to the description box and click on wings, and it'll take you right back to the beginning where you can watch me do it again, and I will see you when you have both your wings done. So I've got both my wings done. So we're not gonna sew these on until we have the butt wings done. But first, let's do our feet next. So you're gonna need some yellow. And these are quick, they're just, you have to build so many. So we're gonna do 1 foot at a time, and then I'll put the pattern up on the screen. So you're going to start with a magic ring of 6 single crochets. And for the next 6 rows, you're just going to put 1 single crochet in each of these 6 stitches. So I'm just going to count to 36. After my first row though, I'm going to make that a knot at the back. So this is my 36th stitch. So this is your toe. I'm going to show you what we're doing. These are his feet. So we're going to make 3 toes, and then we crochet them together to make this part. So they are quick. It's just all the toes you gotta make. So we're just going to do 1 foot at a time, because we have to crochet these together, which means the 3rd toe that you do, you can't fasten off. You have to stay attached, and so that we can crochet all of this together. These will all get sewn, so I'll show you how to do all of that so that you can do your 2nd foot. But that's what we're doing. So you can fasten off the first 2 toes, and then the last one, I'll meet you right back here. I want you to stay attached. So this just needs a tiny wee little sewing tail. You're only going to like use 2 stitches to sew. So make another one like this. Make your 3rd one, stay attached, and I'll meet you right back here. So this is my last stitch for my last toe. So I have all 3 of my toes. I'm staying attached over here. So you just need to sew these toes together. Just using a couple of stitches. This stitch here, this stitch here would be where my marker is. So I'm going to go to the very next one and I'm going to sew using these 2 stitches. Make a knot. I'm going to cut this off, but I want to leave a bit of a tail just so I can kind of shove it down there. We're not stuffing these toes at all. I suppose you can do whatever you want. I didn't design it to have the toes stuffed. So then you gotta come over here and just pick whatever 2 stitches you want. So your next couple of rounds is just going to be 1 single crochet in each stitch, but I want you to get 18 stitches, and for that I used my sew spots. So that is my 2 rows of 1 single crochet in 18 stitches. So now we're going to decrease because we want the toes to be spread out. So we're going to decrease this next row. There's going to be 4 single crochets and a decrease. This will bring it down to 15 stitches. That's number 1. That's 4 single crochets and then your decrease. Want to get in there? So repeat this all the way around. You should have a total of 15 stitches when you're done. So that kind of helps pull your toes apart. We're going to keep decreasing. Your next round is going to be 3 single crochets and a decrease. This will bring you down to 12 stitches. So your last round is going to be 2 single crochets and a decrease. And this brings you down to 9 stitches, and that's where we're going to cinch. That's number 1, that's number 2, and then your decrease. So we don't stuff anything. We don't even stuff this part of the foot. We stuff nothing. Because if I was to put stuffing in here, he wouldn't sit up on his own. He would be falling down all the time. So that's why. So from here you can fasten off. We're going to cinch it closed. Going to need a sewing tail. So that's your foot. Fun, fun, fun. Feet are always great. I think the feet on my hippie gnome were the most popular of any feet that I've done. So in and out, in the front loops, all the way around. That's how we're going to cinch in and out. So pull once you're all the way around. So this always looks horrible, and I don't like it. So I'm gonna go and weave. Like if you make hats where you have to weave, you understand what I'm saying to you right now. I'm weaving around the cinch hole to make it look nicer. I work with a central machine making hats and, you know, variable items. And this is what we do to make the cinch look good, so I just thought, why not do it in crochet as well? Makes the cinch just look a little bit neater. And then we're sewing with this in probably this part of the foot anyway, so that's about all you need to do. So go ahead and make your foot number 2. I already started with my toes. When we were making toes, I just made 4 of them, so I still got a bit to do, and I'll meet you right back here, and then we'll get this butt feather done, and then we'll sew everything on. So I got both my feet done. I think we're going to sew these on before the butt feathers, because I don't know if it's going to be easier. It's just probably a smarter idea. I don't think there's really any difficulty in it if the butt feather was on, because butt feather doesn't come anywhere underneath here, but we'll sew these on first and then we'll do the big plume. So you just need to determine where you're putting your feet and then sew them on appropriately. So just make sure that they're not going to be in the way of him sitting, if you know what I mean. So really more front ways forwards than underneath him, if you know what I'm saying. So mine wants to rock back, which means I obviously sewed my feet too far back, because mine wants to rock back, but I think maybe once the plume is on it won't be so bad. It still stands on its own, so that will be what we do next, is the plume, and then once that's on, we'll put the wings on, and that'll be it for the video. So I'm going to start with my koi color. So whatever color you're using, that you have been using for this color, whatever color you used here, that's the color you're going to grab. So we're going to start with a magic ring of 6 single crochets. Your first round is going to be 2 single crochets in each stitch around. So this is amigurumi, so no slip stitching, no chaining. The first stitch gets the marker. The second stitch can now go in there. 2 single crochets in each stitch around gives you 12 stitches. Your next round is going to be 1 single crochet and an increase. Your next round is going to be 2 single crochets and an increase. So your next round is going to be 3 single crochets and an increase. Your next round is going to be 4 single crochets and an increase. This will bring it up to 36 stitches. So I'm on my last stitch. I'm putting my increase in here. And on the very last stitch, I need to change color. I'm going to brown. So with my brown, I'm going to do 5 single crochets and an increase. I'm just weaving everything in here at the back. So I'm on my last stitch. Now this is going to be the part that gets put on the butt itself. We haven't started the feathers yet. So sticking with your brown, I want you to do 1 single crochet in each of these 42 stitches, and then when you come to the end of this round, we're going to be changing to white. So this is my last stitch. I'm going to go to white. And with white, I think I'm going to tie these together. I didn't know what I was going to do here, but I think I'm going to tie these together, but I'm going to leave the tails long just so I can weave it in. So with my white, you're going to see brackets written on my channel, and brackets means all in the same space. So you're going to do, in this first space, you're going to put 3 double crochets. We're starting the feathers now. You're going to chain 1 and do 3 double crochets. Just like that. You're going to skip 2, so this might be blocking this stitch a little bit, but skip 1, skip 2, and then in this third stitch you're going to do the same thing. 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, all in the same space. You're only going to do this 8 times. So that's what you should have. This part we never crochet into, we're only sticking with these top parts. So I want you to fasten off. Leave a tail so you can sew this in. I'm going to sew these in at the back all later. So we're going to change to yellow. So get your yellow, make a slip knot. We're going to reattach into the chain 1 space of your cluster. So reattach and chain 2. This chain 2 will count as a stitch for this cluster. So put 2 more double crochets in there. We're going to do the same thing. Oops. 2 more double crochets. So that's now 3, chain 1, and then do 3 double crochets. So it's the exact same thing we do, but we use that chain 2 as a stitch. And then I want you to pop over to the next chain 1 space, and you're going to do 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, just like we did on our last row. There. So now this is what you should have. So we're going to fasten off, and we're going to go to our koi color, or whatever color you used here. So make sure this, you fasten off with the tail. All this gets weaved in. So untangle all my yarn. We get our koi color, and we're going to do the exact same thing. So find your chain 1 space, you can attach any way you want. You can do a slip stitch, you can any way you want. I'm just going to do a single crochet, chain 2, so that counts as a stitch. And fasten off. There we go. So back to our white. It's a big tail feather. So we're going to do another row of white, just like we've been doing. Another row of yellow, just like we've been doing. And then we're going to come back. I'm going to meet you back. I'm going to leave you to do the next 2 rows, but we're doing them exactly the same way we've already done them. The final row is going to be in the koi color, and it's going to be different than all the other rows. So do another row of white, another row of yellow, exactly the same way, and then I'll meet you back for the last, well, it's the last row, but it's not the last thing that we're going to do. So I am all the way back around. I'm just fastening off of my yellow. And this is what you should have. So if you find that yours is cupping too much, that's because you're crocheting too tight. So mine's cupping a little bit up here. But the next thing that we do, like if you just stretched your work out a bit, you might be able to relax the stitches enough that it'll be fine. The next thing we do should flatten anything out, unless it's really cupping, and then you're just crocheting too tight. But this is what you should have at this point. This is how many rows that we did. The last row we're going to do is going to be in this koi color. And then we're going to finish, we're going to make our feathers with the dark brown color. So not quite the last row, but it's the last feather row. So reattach like you have been in between your clusters. You're going to chain 2, and this is going to count as a stitch. So I want you to put 7 double crochets into this cluster, making a cluster. So that chain 2 acts as a stitch. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you should end up with 8 double crochets because this chain 2 will be a stitch, and we did 7. So 8 double crochets, and that's what you're going to do for the rest of the clusters. You're going to go in and do 8 double crochets in the chain 1 space of each cluster. So I've completed all my clusters all along the top, and I'm going to fasten off. So before we continue, all of this has to get weaved in before we can reattach with our brown and continue. So that's what we're going to do next. So this is what you should have. I got everything sewn in except for this. I mean, gets sewn to the turkey, so it doesn't matter. So turn your work over so that it's facing you the front ways. Grab your whatever you used here. Grab that color. I used chocolate brown. So make a slip knot. Go into the last brown stitch that you did. If your stitch marker is still there, then it's probably the stitch marker spot. So attach with whatever you want to attach with. I'm going to attach with a single crochet. Make sure this is long enough to sew in after. You're going to one single crochet all the way up. Now you kind of got stitches that you can follow, and I would just stick, because you're going to have to match the same thing on this side when you come back down. So I would do 3 single crochets, so 1, 2, and 3 on each color. So if you have to skip a space, but try to do 3 on each color, so that when we come back on this side, you can do 3 on each color. That's my suggestion. Other than that, counts don't really matter. You're just going to do single crochets. Try not to have this too tight. And try to pick up at least 2 pieces of yarn. And get into this one. We're going to use these stitches until we get to this space here, and then we're going to go down the middle. So 1 single crochet across your first cluster, and now we're in the middle. So go into here and slip stitch. Turn your work. This should be right underneath. And now I want you to see, this is the stitch I went into. Go into this big space, grab your yarn and slip stitch, and do that twice to fill up the space, because you kind of have to move along. And now into the yellow part, grab your yarn, pull through, make a slip stitch, and then put 2 slip stitches into this big space. This gets awkward over here, where you've got all of this to try to get your hand underneath. So right now it's easy peasy. Into the white, grab your yarn, slip stitch, 2 slip stitches into this big space, and now into the koi, 2 slip stitches into the big space, into the yellow, 2 slip stitches into the big space, and now into the white. I've got a little bit of a smaller space here. You can put 1, and then you're going to go right into the brown to do your slip stitch. So go into the brown this way so you can grab your yarn at the back. You're going to slip stitch and then turn. And slip stitch all the way back up. So this can be moved over if you need the space. But you're going to slip stitch all the way back up the same way you just slip stitched. I know it's going to be hard to see because that's going to want to roll over. So we're into the brown. You still need to go back into this space to do your 1 because it's a small space. And then into the white. 2 into the big... Now we're still in this exact same... working in the same area we've just worked. we're just going back up into the yellow, into this big space, 2 slip stitches, into the koi, into the big space, 2 slip stitches, into the white, into the big space, into the yellow, into the big space, and then into this next cluster you're going to do a single crochet. So that's how we're going to do our feathers. So now you're going to single crochet across and then go down slip stitches, attach to your brown down here, and then back up in the same spaces, back up. So you're going to do the same thing all the way across. And like I said, once you get over here, it's awkward to get your hand underneath there, but it's doable because I've already made one. So single crochet, just remember when you get back to the top, it's a single crochet, not a slip stitch. So we're here at this space, so it's got a little piece of yarn here. I go in between that and I slip stitch, and that's when I turn. And then into the big space to start. Into the yellow, big space. There's only one color you get into each row, and then 2 into the big space in between the colors. So I'm back up to do my single crochet. So if you get something like this, you can see my way through. You can just push those together, because these move in this area. They will move because they're just in spaces, most of them. So I'm back up to the top. I'm just going to slip stitch into the same place I started, do my single crochets across my cluster, and then this side here, if you remember what we did on this other side here, we did 3 single crochets per cluster, and then up here I used 2 of the stitches from the top cluster and then 1 sideways stitch, so to speak. So anyway, this is what you should have, and like I said, you can push these together if you've got spaces. I wasn't really concerned because they are just feathers, but this is what you should have. Very awkward in here, isn't it? I know. Even over here it was quite awkward, but the outcome is fantastic once it's finally done. So these last 2 stitches I'm going to use as like I did over on this top cluster. 2 stitches and then the one on the side to make my stitches. And then I start with my 3 single crochets. Go into your brown where you first started and do a slip stitch, because that's where you're going to fasten off. And this is where we sew from, so we need to sew all of this to the bum of your turkey, of your gobble gobble. So make sure you got a decent sewing tail. There we go. Super duper awkward, but the outcome is spectacular. It looks super good. So you can sew yours on any way that you want, but I think I want the good side out. These pins are called wig pins, if you're wondering. I got them on Amazon. And they're fantastic. So, I think mine's pretty even. Yeah, well, it looks pretty even. So then we just sew our feathers to our turkey. Once you've determined that that's a good spot. And then we can get the wings sewn on and got my pins out. So any imperfections, like here I got stuck on my koi, you can just, all in all, the back doesn't look too bad. And I got snagged on a bit of white, so I'm just going to snip off just to make it look alright. So because we sew around the entire butt, your feathers don't flop all that much other than, you know, right at the top. But if you roll these back, they won't flop as much. So now that we have those on, we can sew on our wings. Just gives you a better idea of where you want them. So they're forward quite a bit. And they angle down like that. I mean, that's how I designed it to be. But you can do whatever you want. I'll show you my other one. That's how they are. That's what I did. So if that helps at all, that's what I'm gonna do. Just I would pin them on first and then kind of step back and look at it type deal. There we go. So you can still get your hands in there if you wanted to put little treats in there. It's like a pocket now because we just sewed the bottom. So if you wanted to put little treats in there, or, you know, for your little kitties, or, you know, anything. You can put anything in there. And that is going to be our Thanksgiving turkey. And I got to move my feet. There, I sewed my feet on better, so now he's standing much better than he was till I touched his foot. Anyway, oh, lay him down. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you in the next video.